Welcome to the S.O.A.P Bible Study Series from Oak Tree Community Church in South Bend, Indiana. I'm Daniel, this is Gary, and we are starting a new series. It's a 3-week series.
We are. A new book. I love going to new books.
2 new books.
It's twice as good.
Twice as good.
It is.
So where are we headed?
Well, we're headed into Haggai, which is this
Where?
hugely long book in the Old Testament. No, it's actually one of the shortest books in the Old Testament.
Yeah.
2 chapters long, so that's why this week we're doing two books. So we'll start and finish Haggai, and then we'll move into Zechariah.
So...
Yeah, what's going on with these guys?
Yeah.
Well, the cool thing is these stories are kind of overlapping on each other. So, not that we do one intro, but we can get by with
one intro for 2 books. Hey.
Yeah, maybe. So in 586, and I gotta steal one of my notes here, in 586 BC, King Nebuchadnezzar, who was the king of Babylon at that time, was off doing some stuff that we don't want to get into, but he comes back through Jerusalem and he wipes them out.
Yeah.
And he had hit them before at least once, if not a couple times before, but this was really the end.
This was the end. Yeah, in 606 or 605 he comes through, and that's where Daniel gets taken away and his friends. Yep. About 7 years later, he comes through, and that's when Ezekiel is taken away.
By the way, he kept going to Egypt.
Well, Babylon and
Jerusalem was along the way.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So now we're in 586, and this time it wasn't just taking some captives, and we see this at the end of Chronicles and Kings. This isn't just taking captives. He's done. Because the Israelites have been pushing back. They've been, doing their little side things.
Yeah,
and everything.
And they're supposed to pay a tribute, and we're not going to pay it anymore.
And he's done. So he flat wipes everything out, destroys the temple, destroys Jerusalem. The rest of the people that are worth taking as captives are taken into captivity.
Yeah. So I think this is where we get no stone left unturned, too. Right? The walls are completely torn down. The temple is completely worn down.
Yeah.
Anything of value was taken out of it and gone.
Yep.
And people were either killed, ran away and weren't hunted down, which was a very few, and then some to many actually taken back to Babylon.
Some ran to Egypt and, in fact, kidnapped Jeremiah, since we're talking about well-known people. Daniel's gone now. Ezekiel's gone now. And some of the Jews actually kidnapped Jeremiah. And he said, don't go to Egypt. I'm not going. They kidnapped him and took him to Egypt. Nice. So he's like, I don't want to do this. So just...
Yep. So now what we would call a remnant, not too many people of Jewish descent are in Babylon, and they're living their lives. Yep. They're in Babylon. Yep. And wouldn't you know it, Babylon now gets overthrown by Persia. Yep. So Persia is the new big dog in the whole region, and the ruler over there is a guy by the name of Cyrus, and Cyrus read the Old Testament.
Go figure.
And he saw something in Isaiah that had his name on it.
Yep.
Which is like awesome. And it said, he let people go back.
Which is really cool because it was written 200 years ago.
Yeah, right.
So this is prophecy that Isaiah had. Yeah. Prophecy that Isaiah had, that God said, write down, Cyrus is my chosen servant, and he's going to do this. 200 years later, he actually reads, hey.
Yeah. So Cyrus talks to him and says, okay, you guys can go back. And by the way, we took from Babylon a number of the things that were yours from the temple. Go ahead and take that too.
Yep.
And this is where Ezra, right, kind of comes into play.
Well, Ezra
with
was
the first wave.
Well, Zerubbabel was the first wave. Ezra was going to be about 80 years later.
Okay, sorry.
Right, but but just to place.
So they came in 3 waves.
Yeah. They were taken in 3 waves, and they came back in 3 waves.
Yeah, right.
So if 586 was the last of the exiles, 539. So we're only talking about 45 years or so. 539 was the first of the returns. That's Zerubbabel. And that sets up Haggai and Zechariah, but that's not, that's still almost 20 years before this. Right?
Okay. And by the way, when we're talking about this, we've gone through a number of these, and we spent an awful lot of time talking about the kings.
Yeah.
And the whole downward spiral that happened. And God keeps saying, you're not gonna like what happens, you're not gonna like what happens.
Right.
And this is the not liking what happened thing, where Nebuchadnezzar comes in and really ends everything.
You can go all the way back to Moses. You go all the way back to Moses, and God says, if you keep disobeying me, I'm going to kick you out of the land. And here we are. Oh no, he kicked us out of the land.
Yeah. But I do think we see in Haggai and other places where the Israelites go, yeah, we pretty much deserve this. Yeah, our bad, my bad.
Yeah.
Type of thing.
Yeah. So Zerubbabel leads them back, and this is the sort of the first half of Ezra. Actually, before Ezra was even born, but Ezra was on.
Okay, that's why it's in Ezra.
It's
but
in
it wasn't
Ezra. Yeah, Ezra wasn't even born until the middle point of Ezra.
Okay.
And so Zerubbabel is the governor, and so he leads this group back of about 50,000 people or so, I think.
Right.
And they're starting to rebuild the temple and just try to
the
get
grounds, right? So they have the altar built.
Yeah.
And then they built the foundation.
Yeah.
And then it stalls.
It just for like 15 years.
Yeah, and so what were they doing? But if you think about it, everything was wiped out.
Yeah.
Right, so they get the altar going, they get the basis of where the temple is going to go, and then it's almost like they said, "Yeah, now I need to work on my house."
Yeah.
So they were working on their house, and they're getting their quote civilization back together.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. So that's really what's going on here. And then, like you said, 15, 16 years.
Yeah.
Nothing has happened.
Yep.
And then Haggai steps up and starts saying, "Guys, something needs to happen.
Yeah.
We need to change." So if we focus on Haggai, most books of the Bible are a little hard to date.
Yeah.
When did this happen? And a lot of times we give a range, which is still amazing. I mean, we're talking in the BCs. We're talking over 2,000 years ago.
And we've got a range of 10 or 20 years or 50 years.
That's like awesome. Well, check this out. We know the year, the month, and the day. Yeah, we don't know AM or PM when the letter was written. But so Haggai starts all of his messages with on X day of the X month of the reign of this king.
Yep.
So that's how we know. And this first section that happens, we know happened on August 29th, 520 BC.
Yeah. And in fact, he has 4 messages in here, and they're all in the same year.
Yeah. It was like 4 months apart, I think.
Yep.
So he delivers 4 messages to the people of Jerusalem over 4 months. The first one is to Zerubbabel and Joshua, who is the high priest.
Yep.
So these are the head 2 guys of Israel.
Yep.
And it basically says, guys, we have to start rebuilding God's house.
Yeah.
I mean, we got into this mess because we stopped following God. We came back. We started doing well. God led us back, got us come back. We're back. We got to do something for God. We got to get his house in order.
Yeah.
And it's also great to get the buy-in from the top officials too. So it makes sense going to them first.
Yeah. And that's what Zerubbabel had led the people back to Israel to do
in the first place.
Yeah. And of course, Joshua was the high priest, so I mean, he would want that going. So they were already sold on it. They just needed some prompting, I think.
Yeah, a spark.
Yeah.
Right. The second message was to the remnant of the people to get the people fired up. The third message is to the priest, and then the fourth message was to Zerubbabel again, the governor.
Yep.
But in all cases, Haggai was just focused on we got to get this temple rebuilt.
Yep.
And really, he saw his job as you guys have misplaced priorities. Let's get it back in place. But, don't make any mistakes. This is God's message.
Yeah.
God told Haggai, get it done.
Yep.
And Haggai was a prophet, and he was telling what needed to be done.
Now, it seems like Haggai might have been maybe a little older, and Zechariah maybe a little younger.
Yeah.
And so they're contemporaries. And so, I mean, they were literally working at the same time, but their stories don't seem to overlap at all.
Yeah, almost. Yeah, like they're single threaded.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So here's the message that God gave from or to Haggai to tell very specific things, and then we literally turn the page and there's Zechariah in the same year.
Yeah, doing his thing.
Doing his thing, and he's got a message too, and it just like literally you turn the page and you just keep going, but there's a new main character,
Yeah, different point of view.
main spokesman
exactly.
for God.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
I do think, Haggai is like, okay, they rebuild the temple. But I do think a good application would be, where are we putting God in our priorities? That where they didn't have a house, they didn't have any kind of infrastructure, and Haggai asked them, put it aside so we could rebuild God's house. I mean, that's a major undertaking.
yeah. Yeah, and yeah, he's not pulling any punches in here. I mean, this is pretty harsh.
Yeah.
It's like, what are you guys doing here? Yeah.
Yep. So then we get into Zechariah.
Yeah.
And Zechariah, like we said, prophet, same time. Haggai was focused on rebuilding the temple. Zechariah was focused, I think, on the people.
Yeah.
On repentance and renewal.
Yep.
And, let's focus on, the nation of Israel as a whole.
And so it was really a two-pronged approach that God was doing through these two guys. They did work together, even though they worked in their
complemented each other.
separate direction, right?
Yeah. Yeah, so we start off in Zechariah, like Haggai, very detailed on when it was written, and we find that Zechariah has a series of 8 visions that he talks about, and I think we cover 5 this week.
Yeah, and there's so much detail in here that there's no way that we can cover all the detail. We could try to gloss over some of this stuff, but we did a teaching series here at Oak Tree through Zechariah that as you read through this, especially if you missed it, but maybe there are parts that you'd like to remember, check out our website, oaktreechurch.com/messages, and you can find our Zechariah series, and we'll go into far more depth than we'll ever be able to do during these reading videos.
Yeah. So I don't know how much you want to cover. It's kind of cool, though, with these visions, because they give the vision, and you go, huh.
Yeah.
But then they give the answer to, or at least part of an answer.
Yeah, at least most of it, yeah.
What they consider as an answer.
Right.
Which sometimes we would like a little bit more than that.
Yeah, so there's visions about horses, and there's visions about people, and visions about priests and the menorahs, and next week we'll get into scrolls and all this stuff, and it's just like, I think the big picture is that if you walk through the visions as a whole, you actually sort of see a narrative weaving through. If you just try to take them each one by itself.
Yeah, but the narrative being their story.
Their story, yeah.
I took you out, now you're coming back.
Yep. Here's what
are you going to do?
Yeah, here's where you came from, here's where you are now, what you need to do about it, and here's what's coming.
Yeah.
And so the visions actually are almost like a panorama.
Right.
Where like you can't just say, well, we're going to study Vision 5. Well, you can, but you can't do that you can't disconnect it from the context and really get what's going on.
Right.
So
I think that's a great way to put it, and it might be a good place to end.
Yeah. Well, so we got the horses and
and the horses are kind of representative of the death and the taking away and the destruction.
Yep.
And then there's horns, and the horns are representative of, is it the scattering or getting back together?
The horns are like their enemies, right?
Yeah, and then the horns are being
them. Yeah.
And then the horns are removed, which allows them
to come back together.
Right.
Then there is the measurer, the surveyor, the plumb liner, the measurer. So God is taking account or taking stock of what's going on right there, so that He can move the nation forward.
Yeah. And it's interesting, right? A surveyor comes in and measures the land, almost like you bought a house. How big do the curtains need to be, right?
Yep.
You're taking stock of what you have.
And it's not so much that God doesn't know, but it's information that He needs the people to know. So He's like, here's what I'm doing. I'm taking stock of who you are, what we have going on here. And I'm letting you know what I see. Here's my assessment of who and what you are right now.
Yeah.
we got some problems.
Yeah. Yeah, well, even the fourth one is the priest.
Yeah.
Right? So the priest shows up in tattered clothing and kind of symbolic of there was no priesthood.
Yeah, this whole thing
there
is,
was nothing.
is in rags,
but
right?
now we're going to put a new hat on and, a new cloak and dress him up and clean him up.
Yep. And then the fifth vision is the menorah, the lampstand. And it's really cool because there's some direct connections to the book of the Revelation here, and the olive trees and the lampstands, and we see all that together. But we have God intentionally. It's not just that Zerubbabel, well, nobody else will do it, and Joshua, well, nobody else will do it. God says, these are the guys that I have in place right now to lead the nation of Israel. They are my witnesses. They're my olive trees. They're my lamp. This is who I want in charge. So there's almost a commissioning here in chapters 3 and 4 by God himself through Zechariah. These are the guys that are going to take you forward. And he says specifically in chapter 4, verse 6, it's not by strength, it's not by power, but it's by my spirit, says the Lord of hosts, of heaven's armies. That's who's going to do it.
Yeah.
So stay connected to the Spirit.
Yeah. Right.
So, yeah, it's a really quick overview, but the background, understanding the background really helps.
Yeah, it does. That is really the story of Israel that's going on.
Yeah.
At least the first 5. Then we'll see what happens next week.
Yeah, so next week we'll finish off the visions and see some of the responses, and it'll take us through a little bit further.
Get into fasting.
Yeah.
Kind of.
Yeah, a little bit. All right. If this has been helpful, then let us know. Let us know what you've learned. Obviously, it was a quick flyover. We can't cover all of the details in these videos. So if you have any questions, make sure you ask those as well. Feel free to pass these along, share these with your friends and family, and let us know that you do that. And we'll see you back here next week as we continue through the book of Zechariah.
Bye, everybody.